As always, this video will be available ad-free in an audio podcast form on locals.com. YouTube ad revenue is honestly unpredictable at best. Locals is an easy way to support for $5 a month and engage with the community further, as well as reach me much more reliably than any other platform with comments and questions. Link down below. Currently, we live in a world of blatant double standards. The examples to prove this extend all the way to the highest tiers of government and, as with any permeating truth, are reflected in our own everyday lives. To see this on full display, look no further than the most recent American Supreme Court vacancy. In 2016, President Obama nominated Merrick Garland for the Supreme Court, and a Republican-led Senate refused to confirm this appointment. During that refusal, both sides argued passionately that the other should be forced to obey or withhold their respective positions entirely. This resulted in a gridlocked process that failed to push ahead during Barack Obama's presidency. Flash forward to 2020, just 4 years later, and we have a similar scenario. This time, a Republican president is nominating a justice for confirmation by a Republican-led Senate, and the arguments are completely reversed. Now, to be fair, there are significant differences. One, the president is not a lame duck in this case, a term simply meaning that the president is ending their second term and cannot possibly retain the office any longer. And two, the same party controls both branches of government required for the nomination. But if you look at the totality of the statements made in 2016, it is very clear and excessively reiterated that the argument was aimed at a general position of either, on one side, you cannot nominate a judge because the election should happen first, versus the opposite, on the other side, saying you must nominate a judge because that is the natural process after a seat opens, and no matter what, it shouldn't be delayed. Well, in 2020, these fundamental positions are precisely reversed, and of course, each side will have an argument as to why that is moral, explainable, and required, that they flip their positions, but the truth is that they are simply arguing the exact opposite of what was argued 4 years prior, purely because the presidency flipped. There are a myriad of quotes from Republicans saying, no matter what, this nomination should not happen, and you can hold me to that if it ever happens with a Republican president in office. Blatant lie. And on the other side, Democrats are raving about how the nomination must happen because our president picked, and regardless of term year, it is the Senate's duty to confirm. Whereas now, in the modern day, they scream to high heaven that there should not be a nomination under any circumstances or a confirmation. The difference of 4 years has made these people argue against themselves. They've traded positions, and now they fight the very words that they spoke in the past because none of them hold an actual ideological stance. They just want to fight their opposition. If they were consistent, we would be having nearly the same argument right now from the same sides, but we aren't because what matters even more than what the position actually is who ends up on the other side. Who is the enemy? If you find yourself agreeing with the people that you hate, well, sadly, many of us will just reverse our position entirely, abdicating all legitimate personal conviction just so we can continue to oppose that group. Today, I want to analyze a very similar, very specific position by an indie game development studio called Fail Better Games. Now, admittedly, I'm not very familiar with their work, but a somewhat rudimentary social media barometer seems to indicate that they make rather interesting and well-crafted titles which revolve around story-driven narratives. That's a good field to specialize in, even more so when you're surrounded in the industry by a sea of live service abominations. So, from the get-go, I would like to accurately appreciate their contributions. However, Fail Better Games look to be making some rather obviously illegal decisions right now and could land themselves in hot water as a result. It basically boils down to a new program of paid traineeship in video game writing. By itself, that seems like a decent opportunity, especially with a narrative-driven indie studio like Fail Better Games, but the methodology here, by way of recruiting, well, it's probably illegal. September 24th, 2020, Fail Better Games put out a social media post reading as follows. We're offering a paid traineeship in games writing running November 2nd to December 11th, open to Black candidates. You do not need to be a UK resident and are encouraged to apply regardless of familiarity with games and games writing. More info here. Checking out the rest of the qualifications on that page, we can see some important points. 1. Fail Better Games is offering a paid traineeship in game writing running November 2nd to December 11th for Black candidates. That reads differently than open to Black candidates as posted on social media. And 2, focus in on the word paid traineeship. It's not an internship or some sort of volunteer work for experience and class credit. It is paid. It is a paid position that qualifies as legal employment. Now, on the surface, if we think rationally about all this, there is absolutely nothing wrong with a program that encourages the participation or application of a specific protected class. You can market the position to them, you can encourage them to submit forms or resumes or whatever it is. You can perform every single incentive tactic imaginable to stack the application pile. And that's totally understandable and legal, by the way. But there is an extremely precise line between selective encouragement and flat-out discrimination. Fail Better Games went on to clarify a few points here. In a reply thread, the following exchange took place. Quote, from someone who was replying beneath their tweet. So to clarify and remove all doubt, especially since there are already negative comments in reply to your tweet, is this opportunity open to all people or only to Black people? Continuing, personally, I took the wording to mean that we are open to anyone, but we feel we lack Black voices in our team currently. We want to encourage applications that would help us diversify further, end quote. The clarification from Fail Better Games reads as follows, quote, to clarify, the traineeship is open to Black candidates. That's a replication of the wording previously. This opportunity is a partial response to Black Lives Matter and a small contribution to a very long-term issue with diversity in the gaming industry, end quote. This helps to clarify in a roundabout way that this legitimately is, as listed on the actual application form, an exclusive paid opportunity based on race. But there are a few more details. When a user brought up the legality of all this, Fail Better Games replied again. What we're doing is lawful. The relevant provisions are in the Equality Act of 2010, Part 11, Chapter 2, end quote. Except they are wrong. Maybe they expected no one to read the law. Maybe they thought that the internet would just take them at their word because they threw down a chapter name and a legal provision. But the truth is, that didn't happen. And that never happens, honestly. And it's very easy to pull up and read everything related to that specific Equality Act. From legislation.gov.uk, we can see the following. Chapter 2 of the 2010 Act, Up-to-Date Information, Section 159, Positive Action, Recruitment and Promotion. 3. That action is treating a person, A, more favorable in connection with recruitment or promotion than person B because A has the protected characteristic but B does not. 4. But subsection 2 applies only if, and this is very important, A is as qualified as B to be recruited or promoted. P does not have a policy of treating persons who share the protected characteristic more favorably in connection with recruitment or promotion than persons who do not share it. And C, taking the action in question is a proportionate means of achieving the aim referred to in subsection 2. This is rather clear. The critical statement is that A must be as qualified as B in order to be recruited or promoted. But this cannot possibly be the case if person B is excluded from the application process purely because of their race. This is a reversal of ideological position, simply based on the opposing side. Fail Better Games is citing legal code that does not say what they claim it does. They have created a paid position where only one race may apply, excluding all the others, not just Caucasian, by the way. And this was done as a response to the current Black Lives Matter movement. The difference here is greater than 4 years, admittedly, but in 1997, the UK drastically updated and overhauled their anti-discrimination laws to protect against hiring practices that were based on or required a certain race, ethnicity, or religion, and to mitigate hiring practices that discriminated based on disability and other protected attributes. In the United States, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was aimed at the very same things, and the legislation was crafted to end hiring practices that diverged from at least a partial meritocracy. Much the same way the two sides have flipped as a result of a Supreme Court nomination, now blatantly arguing against themselves after just a period of 4 years, Fail Better Games has flipped on the topic of discriminatory hiring. The Black Lives Matter movement, different from the organization, these two things need to be distinctly separated here, is cloaked in a form of nearly impenetrable social armor. If you are against any one aspect of that movement, i.e. arson, looting, crime, etc., the accusation can be thrown out that you are racist or prejudicial. Fundamentally, it can be said that you oppose Black Lives Mattering, even though that characterization of your beliefs might be completely false. The same thing is happening here and now with Fail Better Games. In the past, an ideological war was fought, a literal war in some countries, to ensure that hiring would no longer be based on race. The opposition believed that businesses should be allowed to hire purely based on race, because they thought it would allow them more information on what candidate would be better. And that was born of their own erroneous belief that race somehow impacts basic aptitude or behavior, which it does not. Accelerate through time, and what do we see? Hiring based on race, because a certain set of people believe that this somehow impacts that person's value to the company. The positions changed. 60 years ago, hiring someone because of their race was legally permissible because the authority at the time perceived there to be acceptable reasons why you would not want a certain race as an employee. This was rightly overthrown because there are not valid reasons to want exclusively one race as your employee, and all candidates must be considered without discrimination. Now, Fail Better Games has come full circle back to discrimination aimed at only one race to apply for a paid position. And the only thing that changed, absolutely the only thing, was the preferred race. They have cited legal code that plainly states their actions to be illegal, and for some reason still proceed regardless of all this, because much the same way a two-party system flipped completely on a very obvious and simple position in 4 years, this has nothing to do with ideological consistency. I don't know what will happen to Fail Better Games, and I'm not a lawyer, not by any stretch, so if there's some obscure legal code or court precedent to allow for the exclusive and discriminatory hiring of only one race of people in the UK, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be open to it. But everything I've seen comes back to the central reality that Fail Better Games have now executed a supremely racist hiring practice as a response to a movement claiming that the system is racist. It's incredible to me that we exist in an age where this level of ideological degradation and hypocrisy continue to exist. But that's it. If you want to support, again, links down below, merch, locals, other social media, and another gaming YouTuber to check out as well, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.